Welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series trusted by the adjusted and brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as we welcome our citizen scientist and entrepreneur, Daniel Trevor. Daniel Trevor is a CEO, an author, an entrepreneur, and a diverse career spanning in technology and health and finance and media. He's going to be an epic load of fun.
Oh my God. Okay. It's a lot to live up to.
That's right. You got a lot to live up from. This is an amazing moment because having an author like this who thrives in making sure that startup companies are developing things like anti-aging products, that's really going to be the fun when we start talking about it. He is actually a very true innovator. After reverse multiple silent health conditions, he now shares his research through his work as the CEO of NutraNuva, an anti-aging science. How much fun is this going to be? Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Sherry. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
We are too, because first and foremost, it always catches your eye when you bring up a book that has donuts on it. That's just not fair as a woman who loves pink covered donuts. So you got me at the donut. For my audience that's listening and not watching our video, this is a beautiful cover because it has all sorts of pretty foods that a lot of us will have to recognize are not good for our health. So we're going to jump right in. He wrote the book, The Unholy Trinity, How Carbs, Sugars, and Oils Make Us Fat, Sick, and Addicted, and How to Escape Their Grip. And it's grip that we all must deal with, our resilience to daily life and lifestyle choices. But first, before we go too deep into your book, I just want to learn from you because you have a eclectic opportunity to see things differently than most because of the different careers that you have spanned. And I would like to just get an understanding from you, knowing where you've been in many different arenas. How did this all come together for you to write Unholy Trinity? And then how's your background kind of formulated this moment for you?
Well, my story is a bit more dramatic than other authors in that, not to say that other authors didn't go through some kind of a life-changing experience, but a few years ago, I had a heart attack and almost died. And it was a complete shocker to me. Luckily, early on, I learned how to study well. And I learned how to conquer terminology and nomenclature. And so I could dive into anything and look at statistics and data and analyze them and that kind of thing. I had to be interested in it, of course, but after the heart attack, I was never more highly interested in anything than how did this happen to me, right? So I took the dive and basically I just went to Google University and YouTube University and all these books and, found all these geniuses on the, modern medical geniuses on the edge of modern medical science and metabolic health. And I learned from a lot of them and I took a deep dive into it and then I wound up writing this book. I had been chronicling all of my information, and I got to tell you, what I discovered absolutely blew my mind. It shocked and infuriated me because what we've been told to eat for over 70 years has been killing us.
Yes.
It's insane that this information has been kept from us. And I think of the book as three things. First of all, it's a how-to book on how I reversed 4 comorbidities, which I'll tell you about. Beautiful. And it's also an expose on big food, big pharma, and big medicine. And it's also what you might call a situation and data evaluation and analysis of this. In 1930, the obesity rate was 1%. We are now approaching 50% in under a mere 100 years. In 1930, the chronic illness rate was between 6 and 7%. It's now over 60%. Never in human history has a population gotten so fat and so sick so fast. You got to say, what the hell has happened here? What did happen? And when you pull the strings and you do the analysis, you find out that it is the introduction of what I call the unholy trinity, the carbs, the sugar, and the oils in the 20th century in the amounts and concentrations never before seen.
That's
It's
role and you bring it out really nicely in the book. And for those that are listening, it's Unholy Trinity. You've got to pick this book up because you're going to be not only entertained, but it really, you have so many references that you can go back and then look at the research. Where's this information coming from? Some of it you're going to say, oh, that can't be true, but it's true. There's research to support it, and that's the hardest part to understand. And when you said it in the book and you really showcase the research that's going on, we are the sickest nation on earth that spends the most on healthcare, and that is really troubling. And with your story, and if you're listening right now and you could actually see Daniel, you'll see a vibrant man in front of you. You're not going to believe that this man has suffered through some of the heart issue that he had, and a few other things that you're going to tell me about that you had to reverse. Because that's what this is about. It's a fun, relatable way on where you are today to where you need to go and how life can change. And so share with us a little bit about, well, first you had to stop, obviously, the fact that your heart gave way. And now what are some of the other things that you learned in your own health that you had to reverse?
Well, I'll tell you that. But first, I'd like to comment on what you said with regard to my citations and references and that kind of thing, because I knew I had to have that backup, right? So, because I knew there were going to be people to say, oh, he's not a doctor, he's not a scientist. Why the hell should I trust you? And I tell them, don't. Look, my book has more scientific citations and references than any other health and wellness book in existence. Most of them they'll have 100, 200, which is good because that way you see what the author is talking about is coming from some valid, RCTs, randomized controlled trials, and that kind of thing. And mine has 1,227. So I tell the reader,
I wasn't making it up. There's a lot of references in there.
So I tell the reader in the book, I say, look, none of this is Daniel's opinion. Just think of me as a friendly relay point of what the best of 21st century science has to offer for your health and wellness, and fix yourself. I did. You can too. My 4 comorbidities, they're very, it was really the first thing. See, you have to, the number one thing that I tell everybody is you have to test. If you're over 35 or 40 and you're not doing regular testing, that's like driving down the road without a steering wheel or a speedometer, and you will crash. I mean, because, by the time you have symptoms, you're way down the line and it's a long road back, or it's just too late. Listen to this stat. 60%, a full 60% of the people who have a first heart attack and they die from SCD, sudden cardiac death, that's our biggest killer. 60% of them, their very first symptom of having heart disease was their own death. It's like, what? And so, you have to do the testing. And most doctors, sadly, don't know the right tests to do. And that's why early on, I found this gentleman, brilliant doctor, Dr. Ford Brewer. And I reached out to him and I said, and he's brilliant. He's taught thousands of doctors at Johns Hopkins over the years. And he knows more than 99% of cardiologists, right? So I asked him, I said, would you write a chapter in my book delineating what are the most important blood labs and scans that anyone can get online without needing a doctor's prescription? That way you yourself can find out if you got something lurking, ready to pounce, or you're just fine, or somewhere in between that needs attention. Because what happens is sometimes you'll go to your doctor and you say, hey, I was on Dr. Sherry's, YouTube podcast, and I saw this, I heard about this test, and I get this one and this one. And your doctors might say, and I've discussed this with other doctors too, they might say, oh, you don't need that, you're fine. You don't need that, you're fine. The only reason they're saying is because they don't know what it is. They wouldn't know how to analyze the results when they got it. And the last thing doctors want from their patients is homework. Yeah. They don't want homework. they're so busy. I mean, I feel bad for them because, especially if they're working in a hospital system or a clinic, they've got a boss, they got to see X amount of patients, they got all this computer work to enter in all the information from the patient and, what's the new prescription. And it just comes down to drugs and procedures and drugs and procedures and more drugs and more procedures rather than saying, okay, so what's the root cause of why this guy is this way? And that's never addressed. And so, there was a stunning and shocking statistic. This was out of Johns Hopkins just a few years ago, and they found out that 74% of doctors, now we're talking family physicians, general practitioners, internists, and cardiologists, 74% do not know how to properly diagnose and figure out that the person has prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's like, what? That's our biggest epidemic, 74%. And that was me. Because what happens is a lot of times there are many, many people that, because most doctors, what they'll do is they'll test fasting blood glucose and A1C. And even the American Diabetes Association will tell you, hey, if you just test those two, you're going to miss a lot of people, the vast majority, because what they do, they don't do this other test. It's called the OGTT with insulin, oral glucose tolerance test with insulin. Doctors don't order it. But that's because that was me. I had normal fasting blood glucose, normal A1C. But when I did this OGTT with insulin, oh my God, I was off the charts. I was over 200 on the first hour.
Wow.
And so I was a raging type 2 diabetic and didn't know it because there's no symptoms to any of these diseases of modernity. And I say modernity because, in 1900 or from 1910 and all prior, people died of mostly of infectious diseases, tuberculosis, influenza, that kind of thing. Maybe some gastrointestinal problems because we didn't have refrigeration and sometimes we ate something nasty and had a pretty painful death.
Yeah.
And the very first medically recorded heart attack didn't occur until 1912. And then cancer wasn't even like a thing, as they call it, until the 30s. And so, you look back in all the introduction of the carbs, the sugar and oils. And when I say, let me define what I'm talking about here. When I say carbs, I'm talking about your refined and industrially processed grains that they turn into powders, that they turn into bread, pasta, cereal, biscuits, pancakes, waffles, tortillas, pizza crust, and on and on.
Lunchtime yet?
Say again?
Is it lunchtime yet? You're making me
God.
hungry.
Oh my God, I know. It's the addiction we got to get away from.
It
I
is.
give a lot of tips and tricks on that, how to get. And then came along the sugar, you have the candy cake, ice cream, soda, fruit juice, and all that. And Hershey's came up with their first candy bar in 1900. It's like, what a way to start a century, right?
Yeah.
And then all the other candy bars came along and that kind of thing. And so, you really have to do the testing so you know exactly where your starting point is before you have a surprise like I did.
You said something that was really interesting. I want to just touch on it is the root cause. And one of the mainstays for chiropractic being another best option to care is being able to find, deliver, and accurately diagnose the root cause. This is done by very specific objective findings. So we're talking subjectively to the patient, but we're objectively looking at the patient and we're finding out what's the root cause. So I don't want my listeners to miss the root cause. And when you said it, I thought it was beautiful and an opportunity to have that reflection of we need to get down to the nitty gritty. It's not just, hey, we have a lot of sugar out into the world. There is, and you noted some of them. And shock and awe was, I was on an airplane, Daniel, and I saw that they use this yoga mat compound. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it actually helps bleach our flour. The same compound that actually makes yoga mats is bleaching our flour. And that made me stop and think, how did we get here? Like, this is a moment of reflection. And I wanted you to really help our listeners. You said, number one, get tested. That's a big piece and finding, because you'll find the root cause. Let's go down the road because you're number two. What's your next one?
Well, you have to discover where you are. Then you have to investigate and learn. You got to start, by getting your book, my book. Just start figuring out what's going on here after you get the test and what does it mean. Oh my tests are showing that I have elevated GGT. What is that? Gamma glutamyl transferase. Why do I need to worry about that? Go online, elevated GGT. I mean, that was one of my. Let me explain that one. I'll get into my next comorbidity. I had the heart disease, had the type 2 diabetes, which of course is the source root cause of all these other things. That's why I've labeled it the gateway disease. Because once you got prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, that's the source root cause of heart attacks, strokes, cancers, amputations, Alzheimer's and dementia, blindness and cataracts, sleep at PCOS. The list goes on and on. Thus the gateway disease, right? And so you have to find out what that is. My next one was on my list was I had this elevated GGT, gamma glutamyl transferase. My doctors don't check those. Most doctors, what they'll do is they'll check these other three, ALT, ASP, ALP, and which is fine, but they don't check the GGT, and that's the most important one. Why? Life insurance companies, they got to know who to accept and who to reject. It's just money to them. They're not so interested in medical science. I mean, they're damn good at analyzing data and statistics, and that's why they've been the most successful companies on the planet since the 1600s, right? Insuring boats that would go out into the ocean. And it's just mind-boggling. And they figured out that having elevated GGT, gamma glutamyl transferase, a liver enzyme, is their number one predictor of all-cause mortality. Number one. Total cholesterol, LDL, they don't even make it onto their, mortality predictor lists. They don't even make it there. I debunked the whole cholesterol thing in chapter 5, which you probably saw.
Yes.
But anyway, so I had a fatty liver. I didn't know that I had fatty liver. And that's where this thing called high fructose corn syrup comes in. And I didn't know. I'm just like the regular person. You go into the supermarket and you think, well, if any of this stuff was bad for me, was going to hurt me, it wouldn't be for sale, right? I mean, you don't think that loudly in your mind, but you just assume it. And there's no education on any of this. And that's why I thought, well, geez, I have to share this with my fellow brother and sister humans to warn them that what we've been told to eat with this corrupt food pyramid for 70 years, 60, 70 years is killing us.
It is. Now, let's talk about this because this is a really important reality for those that are listening is he turned it around. And that's why this adjusted reality is about taking action. It's about motivating yourself to see how are you going to live your best life? And then who do you trust to walk with you on that path? And that you just shared with us is we need to be proactive for ourselves and then react when we see, the world may not be exactly how we see it, which is walking into the grocery store. If you go in the center of it, you're in the center of pain. That is the center of pain because now you've got all the sugars, the refined, the high fructose corn syrups, the massive sugar amounts, high salt. I mean, you could pretty much say, I had someone say this to me the other day, if you put salt on it, it'll taste good. And I laughed. And one day, I don't like Brussels sprouts. My husband made them. And I thought, okay, if you put salt on it, maybe I'll eat it. And sure enough, it was more palatable. But you can't go through life jacking up the bad to get to the good. It doesn't work. And you're fit. That's what I loved about reading your intro was you weren't just sitting back and eating bonbons and checking out the donuts. You're saying to yourself, you know what, I want to have longevity. I want to have a great health span, different than a lifespan. I want to be vibrant and active and motivated. And I think I'm doing everything right until you have a heart attack, until you look at your glucose levels, until you find out that you're fat, your liver's fatty. Okay, what was the fourth thing? Because you got to tell the audience. They're on the edge. What's the fourth thing?
Well, yeah, the fourth one was osteoporosis. And I have a whole chapter on that too, chapter 13. And the first study I cover is this study where they're discovering that these bone issues are arriving at much younger and younger ages. The study was looking at people from 35 to 50 that they're having osteopenia, osteoporosis, and that kind of thing. And it's because of the introduction of the carbs, the sugar, and the oils, right? And I should get into the oils too at some point. But yeah, it's just you go down these aisles, and all of these ingredients are in many, many products. See, Big Food has these biochemical geniuses in their conference rooms and labs around the world figuring out, okay, so what is it we can put into our products that it makes them, it stimulates the opiate receptors in our brain so that we eat the whole bag, not half the bag, right? I mean, it's just, they're really coming after our opiate receptors. That's the main thing. And so what you're saying is just so accurate. It's just, you have to take the dive and do the analysis and find out what's going on with your body, and then start to gradually eliminate those things, because I'm just like everybody else. I knew enough to not be indulging in the Fritos and the Coca-Cola and all that. I was totally believing in the propaganda and the BS of heart healthy whole grains.
Oh dear, let's talk about that.
And I didn't know that when you eat heart healthy whole grains, they turn into sugar in your body. And I didn't know any of that. And each morning I'd have this bowl of granola that had to have at least 50 or 60 grams of carbohydrates in it, which is more than I get in a whole day now. And, HFCS, high fructose corn syrup, and that kind of thing. And then for lunch, I'd have to have I'd have 2 slices of whole grain bread with my low fat turkey breast sandwich. Had to be low fat. That's a total bunch of BS that's been fed to us. See, that happened in the 50s and 60s. What happened was, in the first couple of chapters, as you know, I try to give the reader an idea of how did we get here, right?
Yes.
And I have, I think the second graph in the book, I have a graph where it shows the degree of heart disease from 1900 down here to 1955 up here. What happened in 1955 was President Eisenhower, he had a heart attack, and it was a big deal because a lot of people at the time were having these heart attacks and go, what's going on? It was a big scare. And what had happened was they discovered this thing called electron microscopy, where it's where you could snake up these teeny tiny cameras into the arteries to find out what's going on there, right? This is years later they discovered this. And they discovered this thing called the glycocalyx. What is that? Glycocalyx is this fuzz-like protective lining of the artery walls, and it's the first line of defense against what's called small, dense LDL particles. And what they can do is invade the artery wall, and they get stuck beneath it in this place called the intima media space. They build up plaque over time. They oxidize, and then you start taking friendly fire from the immune system, and neutrophils and monocytes, and then foam cells and macrophage and all this. I don't want to get too sciencey on you, but and then you build up this soft, inflamed, dangerous plaque. And at some future stress moment, whether it's a physical stress, mental stress, or both, that soft plaque can rupture through the already damaged arterial wall. It spills into the lumen where the blood flows. It touches blood, creates a clot, and the clot breaks off and it goes downstream, so to speak. And if it goes to your heart, you have a heart attack. If it goes to your brain, you have a stroke, which tells you right there, it can happen. It's systemic. It can happen various places in your body. And that's kind of like the short story of what happens in a heart attack. So you want to avoid all the things that create these small, dense LDL particles. This is called pattern B. And what those are is, what they discovered was, in discovering this glycocalyx, they looked back and they discovered that smoking, which was an epidemic back then, destroys the glycocalyx, the first line of protection against these, And, and then years later, they found out that there's a worse destroyer of the glycocalyx, and that's the carbohydrates from refined grains and sugars.
Bingo.
Oh my
And
God.
guess what? You didn't need to smoke. You were doing all the damage by your very great granola breakfast. And it's shocking because, the one thing that I want my listeners to hear is that there is an optimistic outcome because Daniel's with us right now. He's been through the grinder physically and I'm sure mentally when you go through something like this, and you can come out the other side after making the change. Did you think it was possible to go through osteoporosis, a heart problem, the diabetes, and fatty liver? Did you think you could come out the other side and be who you are today?
Well, no, if I didn't do this dive, I'd be gone by now,
So
and
you still had optimism because you're fighting for information. You're fighting for facts. That's
well, I was
the reality.
fortunate to be in a position where I knew how to analyze technical data. I've studied technical data all my life, and I could pull the strings and confront it and take a look and see what's going on. And like I said, I don't know if this was a gift from God or what, but
Gift
I
of
came along at
humanity that you were willing to take the lesson. You took the lump for all of us
uh,
to wake up and go, it's not a dress rehearsal. You're
yeah, and
I,
listen, it's so important to get the right testing too, because like I said, the doctors don't know the right tests, even many cardiologists, and I cover all those. I have them, well, they're in Dr. Ford Brewer's chapter that I tell you about, and also in the conclusion of my book, I I say, look, there's a dizzying array of testing that you can get, but if you just want to pick four or five, these are the four or five to get. And I also have that up on my website too, where, it's like I don't have vitamins I'm selling or powders or anything like that. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, because, I have a lot of colleagues that do that. You can find out about all the tests. It's danieltrevor.com. At the top, you'll see blood tests. You click on there and tell your doctor you want these for.
yeah.
And if they balk, they don't want to do it, you can order them yourself right there. I made a deal with Quest Diagnostics, which is the largest lab. There's thousands of locations all around the country. You can get your A1, your OGTT with insulin today. I mean, you can order it today and have it done tomorrow at a lab near you, and you can find out, hey, am I really okay, or am I a pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic? Because that's your very first, most important. In fact, chapter 7 is where I talk about it. Chapter 7 is called The Most Important Health Tests You've Never Had.
Yeah. It's a rest assess. It's you get the assessment so you can rest easy at night and you kind of have an idea of where you are. Because if you don't know where you are, you're lost. And as we both know, oftentimes GPS maps can't find lost. It's a reality that all of you out there need to know. Go ahead and
Yeah.
find no satellite systems. You have to figure out the old time way of knowing where true north is. So having said that, if you want to go from nowhere to now here, you find your GPS location by doing some of the things that really smart individuals like yourself had to work really hard to figure out, and going through some of these variations of unfortunate led you to come to where you are today. Can you give our listeners an update on where you are today for your own personal health, and what are you striving for the future? What are the things that maybe you stumble on for your longevity? But I really want a feel good story today. I want people to go, yeah, Daniel did it. I want to do it too. So tell us where you are today, Dan, because you look beautiful. And I say that because you have a radiance about you that shines, and you're willing to come on Adjusted Reality and share your wisdom. And that to me means everything. So tell us, where's Daniel today?
Well, can I hire you as my PR agent?
We'll adjust everyone.
I don't have one, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Well, basically, I discuss this with other people that have appeared on their YouTube channels, like Dr. Ken Berry, and there's this guy, Dr. Philip Ovadia, who's a cardiologist. He's a cardiac surgeon. He's done over 3,200 heart operations, and he's
Wow.
brilliant at all this, right? And I was discussing this with him, and the fact that, when you have a heart attack, you have permanent damage to your heart. No one knows how much or to what degree or how many months or years it might shave off the end of your lifespan. That's unknown. So when I had that and I found that out, I thought, well, what is it that I can control? What can I have cause over? And I decided, well, I'm going to do my best to get into the most superior metabolic health as I possibly could. So that's what I went after. And the way you do it is you want to find a diet that puts you into what's called ketosis,
Sure.
which is evolutionarily consistent with how we were the state of our bodies for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And those diets are low carb keto, and then there's ketovore, which I stole from Dr. Ken Berry. That's what he calls it, where you're just see, keto is higher fat and protein, lower carbohydrates, which is very evolutionarily consistent. That's how our ancestors ate, and our hunter gatherers, even the existing ones on the planet now, they eat high fat, and that kind of thing. So it's not. And this introduction of this suppressive food pyramid is like, wow, it's amazing, and I'm glad that's going to be changing soon too, because
Yes, it will.
yeah, because well, due to the success of the book, I was happy to be invited on to the MAHA working group, the MAHA, what is it, Make America Healthy Again, and by Dr. Eric Berg and RFK Jr. and and Nina Teicholz, and we've got these new U.S. dietary guidelines coming out. And I can't talk much about it now because it's still confidential, but it's
That's right.
coming to a YouTube channel near you. Anyway,
You're going to come back, aren't you? You promised, Daniel, when we're able to talk between you, me, and the lamppost, when we're able to talk actually what we know, you'll be able to share with our audience that we're not looking at grandpa's diet anymore. We're looking at tomorrow's diet.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, when you look at, and I have this graph in the book, when you look at where the U.S. dietary guidelines were introduced and the obesity rate, there's like down here, and this is where the obesity rate wound up here. It's just because at the bottom of the pyramid, you have all the grains and the bread and the cereals and the pasta and the rice and all the high carb items.
Yeah.
That these bodies are just not used to. See, our anthropologists and paleontologists and bioarchaeologists, they tell us that we became the apex predator, and our diet always consisted of what we could catch, kill, and eat. Mm-hmm. And what we may occasionally would pick off a tree or a vine, but only when those berries were in season, which wasn't all the time. And so it was always a higher fat and protein, lower carbohydrate diet. That's what these current meat bodies are used to, and we've been corrupting them starting in the 20th century very badly. So it's really a shame that all of this has happened to us. But there are vested interests, and I don't want to get too political here, but I cover it in the book too. But there's big food, big pharma, and big medicine. They make a lot of money on us being fat, sick, and addicted. Where is it?
Yep.
Fat, sick, and addicted, right there, right? And so, big food creates this food that sends us towards big medicine, and big medicine winds up sending us to big pharma for a drug to handle all these things that we've accumulated, all that kind of thing. And with regard to the osteoporosis, what you want to do is you want to get a DEXA scan, DEXA, and that will measure your bone density and all that kind of thing. And then you can see where, and in that chapter 13, I give you a lot of tips and tricks on there's certain nutrients that can really help build up the what's called BMD, bone mineral density. Just to briefly go into that is it's related to your field because BMD and bone mineral density, there are these two things called osteoblasts and osteoclasts, which I'm sure you know about. Osteoblasts with a B, that does the building, and the osteoclast with a C does the cutting. The example I give in the book is when you remodel your kitchen, you've got to cut out some things, and then you remodel and you add in some things, right? You build up some things. And this is a constant state of change throughout the body. It's normal. The body is cutting bone and building up bone. But as you age, that balanced process goes out of whack. And the osteoblasts, the builders, they want to take an early vacation or an early retirement. You can't allow that because the osteoclasts, the cutters, they want to continue doing their thing, and that's what attributes to a lot of your bone issues and osteoporosis and
I'm
osteoarthritis, that
so
kind of thing.
glad you brought that up because you're
Yeah, no,
right.
it's
As
really important.
chiropractors, our number one objective is to ensure balance. That's the critical component to a lifestyle of longevity that has a healthy lifespan. And the balance is you can't let the builders go on strike. Well, the disposers or the garbage dump people go, hey, I got extra time. I need more money. Like get me taking away more garbage. I'm in good shape. But so
Yeah.
when we look at that osteopenia, the steps towards osteoporosis, they creep up on us as we age. And there's lots of good things we can do to really ensure. But first and foremost, you're right. How do you know where you are if you didn't get a DEXA scan?
It's
And
the whole thing. It's all part of the testing. You got to go to see someone like you or one of your colleagues. I'm recently seeing, I'm really a big fan of chiropractic now too, because I'm seeing this brilliant guy here in Southern California. I started. Here's what happened to me. As I was backing out the car, I'm looking this way, I'm looking that way, and I'm start going, "Wow, what's going on with my neck?" Right. So I went to this. First, I went to a what do you call it, orthopedic surgeon,
sure, good start.
and they like to do the cutting, right? And I don't want to do
It's like the
surgery.
osteoclast guys. Like, let's get the C's involved.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not interested. I'm more into the natural way. So a doctor friend of mine told me, "Hey, I had the same thing. I went to see, his name's
Dr.
Doctor
X.
Arlo Gordon is his name. He's a brilliant guy, and he discovered that I had this thing called cervical facet osteoarthritis in 4, 5, and 6.
Gotcha.
All you guys know what I'm talking about. Cervical facet osteoarthritis in 4, 5, and 6, or also known as what is it? A spinal.
Generation.
Was it spondylosis or?
Yes. Yep. Osteospondylosis. But
There you
the
go.
average listener right now, just know that you're having some trouble in the range of motion area of your back, in specifically your neck.
Yeah, the 4, 5, and 6 is at the bottom of the neck, top of the vertebrae there, and so I've been seeing him, and I'm getting like a lot of positive changes because he's been doing it for so long, and he's brilliant at it. So I'm a big fan of chiropractic.
It's such a key piece, Daniel, that you said right there is, the oftentimes when I travel around the country and now the world is sitting with someone who says, "Oh, you're a chiropractor," and then in the 30 years before, I'd get a mixed bag of chips on what I was going to get next out of their mouth. Now it's the 90% chance is going to be, "Oh my gosh, I love my chiropractor." And the big part of adjusted reality is to bring forth that most people keep us as doctors of bones, and that actually is very inaccurate. And so we really work hard, Daniel, because you came in with a neck problem, but the lifestyle, the critical component that you came in with, you knew what you needed to change. You knew you needed some range of motion, and then you recognized that you needed to go to a source that was more on a natural source, which is the best
Yes,
option first. I very, very strongly recommend you try the best option first, which is natural, because
right.
there's going to be room for the cutters. We love them, and they need to
Yeah.
be in their place, and we need to know when, where, and why. And once we have exhausted a natural therapy, then we need to go to that next part. And you've done the hard work. You've done I know where I am. I know what I need to do, and I need to figure out how to balance my life in a way that creates my longevity that I'm searching for, that I really want to build in it. Tell me about some anti-aging strategies that you bring into your life, that obviously chiropractic is one of them, because I think as most people see it is chiropractors, we first and foremost want to prevent, we don't want someone breaking their hip and then falling. That's not
Right.
right. And a lot of
Yeah.
people think, oh, she broke her hip and she fell. Oh, no. Adjusted reality will tell you that patient had osteoporosis. They didn't know where they were. And then the hip broke and they fell. That's the real reality. And you don't know your DEXA scan until you get a DEXA scan and you know where you sit. The second part of that is what are the opportunities to optimize? Like pickleball just became like the latest, greatest, cool thing. Good. Let's get involved in things that we love. That opportunity to optimize our health, but last, alleviation of pain. And first and foremost, what drove you to that chiropractor was, you know what, my neck's not right. I got to fix it. And I love that you take charge. Tell me what you do other than seeing a chiropractor that kind of puts into your strategy of, I want to live a long, healthy span of life.
Well, related to the the falling and that kind of thing, which happens in people as we get older, I have chapter 9, which covers everything about exercise and what are the best exercises and this and that. Because what happens is people get a little frail as they get older,
Hmm?
and they don't have the muscle strength to catch themselves from falling and damaging their bones and that kind of thing, right? And I should mention a couple of the studies that I have in there. And there was this big study. I forget the details and how many thousands of people, but they wanted to know for people over 40, what is the best exercise? Is it cardio and aerobics or is it resistance training? And they did this big study and they followed the people and they tested and they measured them against their metabolic markers like A1C, fasting blood glucose, cholesterol, all these metabolic markers. And they discovered, and I even have the chart from the study in the book. And by far, if you're over 40, the best exercise for people over 40 is resistance training, whether it's the free weights or the machines, whatever. I mean, if you're younger, do anything you want. But for over 40, you gotta hit the machines and the resistance training and the weights because that's see what happens is as we age, these bodies naturally the blood glucose and insulin levels go like this. We tend to get pre-diabetic and type 2 diabetic as a natural course, and that's what brings on the aging diseases of aging and that kind of thing. So it goes like this. One of the reasons why it's so much better for people over 40 is because that starts happening at those ages, right? And there's this concept that they had. I have this in chapter 9 too. It's called a muscle glucose uptake, is what the researchers call it. And that's where when you're doing your curl or you're pressing with your calves on whatever the calf machine or whatever it is, your resistance training, your chest, your back, whatever. What happens is you're pulling glucose out of the blood where it can do great damage and into the muscle where it's used as energy,
Yes.
which is brilliant. That's what you want. You want to pull it out, and that's why more and more these scientists are saying that muscle is the organ of longevity. I mean,
Amen.
one of the studies in the book was like looking at people, I think it's from ages 20 to 95, I can't remember, but the people that had at least medium degree of muscle to a lot of muscle lived the longest. Less, events, heart attacks, strokes, death and that kind of thing. So it's so important. So if you're over 35 or 40, you got to do the resistance training because that turns on this muscle glucose uptake, which I explain all this stuff in detail there. But
Isn't that a
yeah, so
reality check? Really, when you think about it, you got to do the hard work to get the benefit. Like it's nothing that you and I haven't ever experienced in our life. I'm telling the audience right now, you got to do the hard work. You want to live happy, you got to do the hard work. You got to do the things that we know are going to make a difference. And when you age, you naturally lose your balance. And the best way to gain that balance back is to be repetitive every day. You start doing your balance and yoga, things like that, that really do strengthen your balance, but also strengthening that muscle. That muscle has a metabolic attitude, and you have to get that metabolic movement in. And I love that over time the research is actually picking up, Daniel, where we knew what we knew until we started seeing the research come out, and it really changed the way we looked at things. It's like now we understand, do you have to run to do the best for your body? No, you can walk. I mean, depending where you are, because some people just love running. I happen to be one of them. I love to run. Walking, I'll do it, but I love to run. So you find where you're at. Building your muscle strength is critical to not only living a healthy activities of daily living, being able to lift the groceries, being able to walk up one of those, you have a light out and you put a ladder up there. Do you feel confident enough at age 75 to go up a ladder, change a light bulb, and come back down? Because at some point you're going to end up being 75 and you're going to have to ask that question. Do I want to go up that ladder? Reality. Here's where we are. If you're 20 years old and you're listening right now, you're going to be 75 one day. Do the work now. Hard work pays off, right? So, having said that, the book is fantastic. And I know our audience really does appreciate that you've done your hard work. When you look back, and this is really a hard question to ask, but when you look at your younger self and some of our 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that are listening right now, we thank you, we love you, and we want you to listen to the wisdom that's provided by those who have walked through the fire. What would you tell that young 18, 19, or 20-year-old self? This is what you need to know, that one thing that maybe it would change the outcome.
Well, what always made sense to me is when I discovered the fact that all of this, everything that I wrote about is how we lived ancestrally, our evolution, how we were evolved over the millions of years. Like I said, between anthropologists and bioarchaeologists tell us that it's over 2.6 to 4.5 million years. I think it's a lot longer, but I'll take it. I'll take 2.6 to 4.5. That, it was always a high fat and protein, low carbohydrate diet because we never had candy cake, ice cream, bread, pasta. I mean, bread was only in the last 9 or 10,000 years, which is a blink of the eye in the eons of time. And so I would encourage them to think ancestrally. How did when you and I were out hunting 3,000 years ago, or 300 years ago, or 13,000, I don't know, whatever it was, and we came across, we were hunting for food.
That's right.
And we had to lift heavy things, and that was the existence, and that's how these bodies have evolved. And if I can get the idea to these younger people that you want to think that way, and there wasn't pre-workout drinks, and there weren't all of these carbs, sugar, and oils. We haven't dug into the oils yet, but I'll let your readers or your listeners dive into chapter 6, the shocking truth about vegetable oils and how they were never even in existence until the late 1800s. And they were in
truth. Yes.
Yeah, they were used as industrial machinery lubricant in the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
And
but I would give them that.
Are we not? Like we, when you treat us like a machine, why are you surprised that we break down?
Oh my God. Well, the thing is that just briefly on that, and I'll continue on the advice mode that you're getting me into now. And that is that, see, these vegetable oils, what happened was there were these two guys from Europe that came over and they looked at this bucket of cottonseed oil, which was considered a toxic waste, and it resembled lard, which is what people use to cook with. And they said, hey, well, why don't we sell it to people and make some money? And these two guys were William Procter and James Gamble, Procter and Gamble. And they came up with this product called Crisco. And it started flying off the shelves in 1911. And wouldn't you know, 1912 was the first heart attack. Crisco has more trans fats, which has been established to be the worst kind of fat you can put in your body. And that wasn't discovered until the 1990s. And, finally, these trans fats were finally banned by the FDA banned them to get, food companies to get it out of all their products and everything. It gave them 3 years. But anyway, when you heat up these oils, like in the fast food and any kind of restaurant, that's why you want to always ask them to use butter. What they do is they have these chemicals that get restimulated, and then they come to the fore. TBHQ, 4-HNE, that's 4-hydroxynonenal, aldehydes like in cigarettes. And these are neurodegenerative, carcinogenic, and 7 to 10 times more likely to cause inflammation and heart disease. Yep. It's like, what? So that's why oils are included in there. That's your soybean oil and canola and all those poisonous things. But anyway, I would give them all the advices in this book that I wrote. That was done a great effort, and glad I survived in order to be able to chronicle all of it. And I would tell them that, and move, do something to get, like what you were saying. You have to keep moving. But again, with regard to jogging or running or sprinting and that kind of thing, one of the things that I do cover, not in the book, but I send out a newsletter once a week, every Friday or Saturday, and you can sign up for that at danieltrevor.com too. And what it is, it's just you get a free preview of the book, which is the first 48 pages, right? And they can sign up, they can unsubscribe at any time. But about a couple of weeks ago, I was going over, there's some definitions. There's jogging, which is like at a slow pace, like about 4 miles an hour. And then there's running, which is more intense and faster. And then there's sprinting, which is maximum.
Yep.
Jogging, when you and I were hunter gatherers, there was no jogging.
No jogging.
We sprinted when we were chasing after our food
That's
or
right.
running away from the food, from being food, right? That kind of thing. But there was never any jogging. I mean, if we jog, the tribe would think we had gone mad,
Yeah, you're wasting a lot of energy with no return.
Yeah, no, I say, hey, did he, what's wrong with Frogmagog? Did he eat one of those magical mushrooms again? Or, what's he up to if you go for a jog for a half hour? And listen, I say clearly, if you enjoy running, do it by all means. It wasn't until 1896 when they had the first Olympics in Athens, they added this thing called the marathon. And that comes from this, it was a plain in Greece where the Greeks had just defeated the barbarians, or the Persians rather, they considered them barbarians. And this Phidippides, he was a Greek messenger, and he ran for almost 25 miles to Athens to announce the glorious victory. And so upon his arrival, he announced the victory. It was very glorious and everybody was celebrating. And then he collapsed and died. Because it was just too much. You can't, there's just so much a human body can do. And I'm not saying people don't jog, don't run or anything like that. I'm just saying you have to do it in moderation if you're going to do that. If you're going to do anything, to really, like Dr. Sean O'Mara recommends, sprinting, because it's a much more evolutionarily consistent. You do sprinting for, 20 seconds and then you take a rest. You do another one, that kind of thing. That's more evolutionarily consistent. But again, I tell people, you can get so many gains if you do just a little jog, just by noticing the environment and getting out into the space and the viewpoint of dimension and looking at things. That's therapeutic too for your mind. So
exactly.
Anyway, I would just give that advice to just, try to live ancestrally, and which is what I talk about in the book, which is low carb. You do some intermittent fasting, because let's face it, we were lucky to eat once a day, right?
Yeah.
And when I say intermittent fasting, I don't want to scare anybody that we're talking about days of not eating. It's just 16 hours, because it turns on this wonderful, amazing thing called autophagy, which is where the cellular troops come to bear and they start eating up like Pac-Man.
Yeah.
They've eaten up all these bad stuff that eventually turns into disease. And so anyway, that's the advice that I would give based on ancestral evolution.
Fantastic. Now, last question for you. If you heard yourself say all the things that you just said when you were 17, would you have listened?
Oh, of course not.
So,
Are you kidding?
so those young people out there, try to be better, do better, have better, and just open up a little bit. Just do a little bit of something is better than nothing. And that one of my favorite wise people once said to me, you cannot outrun your fork. So what goes in your mouth is critical.
Yeah, that's true. Well, when I was 17, I mean, when you and I were 17, 30 was never going to happen.
No,
right? It's like, it's so far in the future. It's like, get out of here. I don't want to know about low carb and, how I ate 3,000 years ago.
They have forgiveness for a reason. When you're under 30, you have forgiveness. When you're past that pit, you know enough to do better. So that's a big adjusted reality right there.
There you go.
First and foremost, thank you, Daniel, for sharing your wisdom. You did a lot of work in this book. You've lived the truth. You're pushing forward. Ask the right questions. and the right answer shall appear. And that's why Albert Einstein always says, treasure the questions, for the answers will continue to change. And boy, you've learned that the hard way. You've learned that trusting in the American diet and the food pyramid that was given to you and I at our age really did lead us down into a road where we now have to pivot and do so gracefully and kindly to our bodies, finding balance, finding the lifestyle doctors such as chiropractic that really help us put back the energy and the opportunity into our lives so that you have someone who can walk with you, not disease care, but actually lifestyle management. And that's a critical piece. So first and foremost, thank you, Daniel, for the hard work. And we wish you all the very best in your pursuit in helping the world continue to change. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Dr. Sherry. I really appreciate it. Big hug.
I want to thank you for tuning in to Adjusted Reality as we spoke to Daniel Trevor about his career and his book, Unholy Trinity, how carbs, sugars, and oils, while they make us fat, sick, and addicted, and how to escape their grip. I think that's a very important word, escape, because we all get under some unfortunate habits that we have to look at in the mirror and we have to ask ourselves honest questions. What do I need to do to make my day tomorrow a better day? And that is why Adjusted Reality is here with you, for you, and all about you. As you know, this podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress. We want you to stay connected and catch every episode by subscribing to our newsletter at f4cp.org/adjusted reality. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations. We love getting your feedback. You make it worth it. And as the now gold winner, Adjusted Reality, for the American Business Awards, the Stevie Gold Award, we're so proud to share with you that we're making progress every day. But we don't want you to forget to subscribe, share this podcast with friends and family. We want you to rate and review, because that's exactly how we know we're on task for you. And if you're feeling so inspired to learn more about chiropractic, or perhaps you want to share more like Daniel did today about your chiropractor, you can find one at f4cp.org/find-a-doctor. If you want to supercharge your whole being, well, our brand new book, Adjusted Reality, comes out on October 14th. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can click the link below in the description of this episode and you can get your copy today. We appreciate all you do coming in every month, listening and learning, sharing and growing with us. And as always, we appreciate you checking in and look forward to seeing you again soon.